Hi, my name is Josh. Welcome back to the library at Hermit Street, where I grab a couple few books out of my extensive personal library here and chat about them. This week we have three picks, one of which I actually just read today as I'm recording this, uh, and two books that it kind of reminded me of after I finished it. So for that first book, we have, and I apologize in advance if I butcher this pronunciation, Ohikkoshi by Hiraki Samura. Samura is probably better known for Blade of the Immortal, and nowadays I think his current series is you might be able to see it over my shoulder there. Wave Listen to Me, which I absolutely love. Um, and that actually has a lot more similarities with this than Blade of the Immortal, which I haven't read, but as that is his most well-known series, I know of it, and it is ultra violent body horror, like a little bit Eroguro. Um, you just really gnarly body horror samurai action, uh, and he went from that to uh, Wave Listen to Me, which is like a very loose, uh, kind of like not a rom com exactly, but like a kind of wild and woolly workplace comedy about a kind of uh, aimless 20 something who gets her own radio show. I love it. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite manga, one of my favorite comics running right now. I think the next volume's out sometime this year, and super hyped. This I found out about. I'm not sure how, but I think it's very out of print. But I found a copy on eBay, and it is Samura doing like three-fourths of the book is a very early 2000s love triangle, art school, college students not really knowing what they're doing or what they're about, uh, romantic comedy. And then there's two other like pretty short stories in the back, one of which is not very good. I really wanted to like it, but it's this very compressed misadventures of this female mangaka who like ends up as a mahjong gambler and like in the in organized crime. It feels like almost a parody of like Ballad of Halo Jones almost. Very weird book, and then I think the last story was just like a auto-bias story about Samura and his editor going to Kyoto for a little bit. But the main story in here is uh, there's this kind of virginal protagonist guy, and he's got a crush on this one girl in his friends group, but his childhood friend has a crush on him, and it's all presented in this very the crazy thing about Samura is he is this insanely detailed and dynamic artist. So for him to go from like incredibly violent samurai comics to like just absolutely crushing it at these 20 something rom-com uh comics is it's like if Frank Miller in his prime went from like Sin City to Archie and then was crushing it on Archie. That's how I feel about these Samura comics. But this, the main story in here, and I'm trying to look up what the actual title is. So the main story is Ohi Ohikoshi Ohikoshi. Uh, And yeah, I it was incredibly nostalgic for me in terms of like I was young once. It's hard to believe it now, but it's true. Uh, and I just loved um, like these kind of like incredibly messy, but also kind of low stakes 20 somethings falling in and out of love stories. Big ensemble cast, a lot of intersecting plot lines. There's a point towards the end where Samura's just like, oh hey, these two characters had a whole like B plot that I just didn't get to. I'm gonna tell you about it now. It's the last chapter or so. He breaks the fourth wall a lot. There's a section where one girl's like, yeah, you go shopping at this store, this store, this store, this store, and there's a little caption saying, your ad here, and then the next panel is her going, we're not actually taking out advertisements. So yeah, just Samura has this really loosey goosey, uh, absolutely wild, barely no like barely coherent, but in a he's such a good storyteller. He's such a good sequential graphic storyteller and illustrator that he sticks the landing whether he should or not on a lot of this storytelling. And yeah, Ohikkoshi, if you can find a copy, or hopefully it comes back into print, uh, very recommended. Extremely my kind of jam. And after I finished it, it reminded me of like a funny version of another comic I read back when I was about the age of those characters, which is Long Hot Summer from Eric Stevenson and Jamie McKelvey, published by Image back in like, oh boy, 2005. So my first year of college this came out. And this is like McKelvey is now known as, for Phonogram and Young Avengers, and is responsible for the modern Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers costume that's become like pretty instantly iconic. This is like maybe his first or second American comic. It is apparently it's like semi-autobiographical from Stevenson, who was the editor-in-chief or like publisher at Image for a while. But it's just this California mod scene, like kids who are into like 60s British mod style and music and scooters and all that stuff. Um, just them, another like the main guy is kind of a cool, callow character. This one girl falls for him. His kind of schlubby best friend is madly in crush with her. It just all becomes kind of this mess. And like he starts seeing this girl and he's not really into her, but his best friend is. And then like, tail end of the book, so they keep trying to set him up with somebody else, and like he finally meets her, and like she would have been a great match for him, but she's going to study. It's one of those like spoilers for the end for a 22-year old book, 20 something year old book. uh the kind of the closing line is like, this is always going to be like the year that you ruined a summer for three people and didn't care until one of them was you. And that's kind of the tone of the book. It's like, hey, here's this guy who is kind of shitty. And I remember reading it when I was 18, and like it hit. I just remember feeling like a punch in the gut as the emotional fallout starts happening in the book, because like I don't know if it's that deep now. um, but like, as someone who was young and very much in my feelings and hadn't had quite a disaster like that before, it just, I'm like, oh my god, this is so grown up and adult. Um, grown ups are complicated. So yeah, Long Hot Summer. I think this is still in print. If not, probably not too hard to find. If nothing else, it's a great example of like early Jamie McKelvey art. Now, our last book, and this is the one that actually, like, if Ohikkoshi reminded me of Long Hot Summer but funny, Samura's art reminds me of like a sketchier Japanese Carla Speed McNeil. And this is another book I read in the early 2000s. It is one of my favorite. I to this day have not read the rest of Finder, but I hung on to this volume just as it's one of the great, like, conversational books about just how messy people are. How messy and interesting. Uh, and like look at this art. Oh man, Carla Speed McNeil is just the best. I'm trying to find pages that aren't too salacious because I don't know how YouTube handles that. But like, just so good. Um, so what this volume is like the main, I guess the main character of Finder. Like I said, I haven't read the full series, but Jaeger Ayers is this like kind of wandering. Um, he's kind of a thug and hitman when he's in the city, and he's kind of like a adventurer, and with his like with his native indigenous culture, he's a sin eater. So like he is, kind of this scapegoat in his own culture, and when he's in the big city, he is this ne'er do well and like troubleshooter, and just one of those kind of generic, not generic, but like one of those jobs that kind of only exists in adventure fiction, where it's like you're not quite a private eye, but you're not a hit. Like he's a little bit of a hitman, a little bit of a leg breaker, a little bit of a this and that and the other thing. And this is him and his friend just talking about Jaeger kind of talking about his difficulties fitting in polite society in the city, through the lens of talking about various women that he's shacked up with while he's been in the city, and his his difficult relationship with them, their unique aspects. Um, and also like Jaeger's got some special properties as a person, let's say, that come to the fore with one of his girlfriends, who has like a when I say a medical fetish, I mean like she gets off on caretaking for people who are deathly ill. So when Jaeger's special medical properties, his ailments come up, it seems like a good match until it isn't. And that's kind of the if there's a theme to the story, it's that I think that it's things work until they don't, and who can figure it out? Not Jaeger. I think there's a line from one of the Dunes: "A process cannot be understood from without it." From something like that. But I think Jaeger is a little too. For as much as the book is Jaeger and his friend being philosophical. Porky pigged myself there. Being philosophical about like what's Jaeger's problem? Why does this keep happening to him? Why does he keep doing this? For as much as it's about that, I don't think there's any. Jaeger doesn't really come to any conclusion, um, except for maybe like a semi-begrudging acceptance that sometimes his shit is just sometimes his shit just comes to the surface, and uh, maybe he doesn't always deal with it in the best way. But yeah, that is my three picks for this episode. They are all weird romance, I guess. Messy romance, definitely, and varying degrees of charming. The two I'd absolutely unreservedly recommend are Find Her Five Crazy Women by Carla Speed McNeil and Ohikkoshi by Hiroaki Samura. If you can't find Ohikkoshi, again, Wave Listen to Me is his current series. It's out from, I think, Viz. It's great. It's like I said, it is this kind of car crash of a young woman who she has a bad breakup and she gets drunk at a pub and goes on a rant, and a radio producer is there and he records it and puts it on his show, and everyone wants more of that. And it goes into some very wild. It gets it. Radio is one of those things that is hard to make interesting in uh, sequential art or prose. It's you're very much trying to visualize an audio medium. So, and Samura being such a great action artist, uh, finds some interesting ways to keep himself occupied for what could just be like a talking head comic. And yeah, I don't think I saw the Blade of the Immortal movie, which compresses a lot of the story. I don't think the actual comic is my thing. I think it's a little too hard boiled. But I love Samura as a wild and woolly uh, comedy creator. Like I think at his best he is not as good as Los Bros Hernandez, but up there. Um, like there's that similar sense of like the world just feels very creatively singular and absolutely lived in, and he can draw his ass off. And it's it's great watching somebody who can draw their ass off lend that talent to like a slice of exaggerated slice of life comedy, because the things he does to like keep himself visually interested, it really becomes one of those comics that's just like, oh, this guy just loves drawing, and he's just kind of drawing whatever comes to mind. And like, again, he's such a naturally gifted sequential artist and storyteller that if it were frankly a lesser talent, it would be an obnoxious mess. His comedy work would be like an obnoxious mess. Because he's so talented, uh, it's shambolic, but it works. So yeah, I wrapped up the episode and then I just kept going. So this is the actual end of the episode. Thank you for joining me as always. I hope to see you again. And yeah, I guess I don't really have a sign off. Speaking of shambolic, but see you next time.